I never thought my own family would betray me like this. My name is Natalie Brooks, and until recently, I believed the worst thing that could happen to me was a breakup or a bad job interview. But what happened to me? It's something straight out of a nightmare, one where the people you trust most are the ones holding the knife in your back. It all started on a gloomy Monday afternoon. I had just returned to Denver after spending 2 months abroad for work. I'm a freelance copywriter, and this client in Italy had flown me out for a long-term campaign. It was exhausting, but worth it. As the plane touched down, all I could think about was how much I miss my apartment, my sanctuary, my books, my cat, Pepper, my bed. I just wanted a hot shower and sleep. But when I got to my building, I knew something was wrong. First red flag? My key didn't work. I stood there for a solid minute, jiggling it in the lock, heart pounding faster with every failed attempt. I even double-checked the number on the door, Unit 3B. My unit. My home. Then the door opened from the inside. A man I'd never seen before stared at me like I was the intruder. Behind him, a woman in a bathrobe peeked out from the hallway. "Can I help you?" he asked, already annoyed. I live here," I stammered. "This is my apartment." "Who are you?" He frowned. "Ma'am, I think you have the wrong unit. We moved in last week. We signed the lease and everything." I felt the world tilt beneath me. "No. This is my place. I own it." I pushed past him, ignoring his protests. My furniture was gone. My photos. My dishes. My bookshelf. Everything I owned had been stripped away like it had never existed. In its place were cheap IKEA knockoffs and someone else's clutter. I was gasping now, shaking, panic rising in my throat like bile. I ran back out into the hallway and called my mom. She picked up after 3 rings. "Sweetie. You're back already? Mom, where's my stuff? Why are there strangers living in my apartment?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Natalie. Don't freak out. When someone says don't freak out, that's exactly when you know to freak out." Apparently, while I was gone, my parents had discovered that my younger sister, Jamie, had racked up over $75,000 in gambling debt. She'd taken out payday loans, maxed out credit cards, and even owed money to people who didn't exactly play by the rules. "So," my mom said, her voice sickeningly calm, "your father and I had to make a hard decision. We sold the condo." I couldn't breathe. "You sold my home?" "Technically, it was in your father's name. Remember? He co-signed the mortgage to help you qualify. Legally, it was his property. We needed the money to save Jamie." I was numb. "You didn't even tell me." "We couldn't. You were overseas, and time was running out." "She could have been hurt, Natalie." I hung up. I was going to scream. I spent the next 2 days in a motel, spiraling. Everything I worked for, every freelance gig, every late night, every cup of instant noodles, had been turned into a lifeline for my sister, who was probably back at home, scrolling through TikTok and sipping wine. I visited the county clerk's office and pulled the property records. Sure enough, the title had been transferred while I was gone. My name was never even on it, just my dad's. I'd paid for everything, mortgage, HOA fees, repairs, but legally, it wasn't mine. I had trusted him. I had trusted all of them. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from Jamie. "I'm sorry you're upset, but family comes first. I didn't ask for this, okay? Don't take it out on me. No apology. No remorse. Just excuses." I didn't reply. Instead, I called a lawyer. Turns out, I wasn't totally powerless. There was a paper trail, bank transfers from my account to the mortgage lender, emails proving I was the one handling all maintenance and expenses, and even text messages from my dad thanking me for covering the mortgage again. But here's the twist: the lawyer told me that because I'd been the one making the payments, I could sue for unjust enrichment. My parents had benefited financially from my contributions without giving me ownership. There was a chance I could recover part of the sale proceeds, or even push for criminal fraud, depending on what else we uncovered. I was done playing nice. The next morning, I filed a formal legal complaint against my parents and sister. I also froze the joint bank account my father and I had opened years ago and had forgotten to close. He'd never touched it before. But just last month, right before the sale, there was a $20,000 withdrawal, directly into Jamie's account. My lawyer smiled when he saw the bank records. "This is going to get very interesting." The betrayal still burned, but something new was rising inside me now, a hunger for justice. They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought I'd roll over and let them steal from me. They were wrong. Because if my family could treat me like a stranger, then I'd become one. To them. For good. I never imagined I'd one day sue my own parents. But when your family treats you like an ATM and disposes of your life's work like trash, there comes a moment when enough is enough. That moment hit me like a freight train as I sat across from my attorney, staring at the thick file of evidence we were preparing to submit to the court. Every page was a reminder: they sold my apartment, stole my savings, and handed it all to Jamie, my irresponsible, impulsive, golden child sister. And now? Now they wanted forgiveness. It started with a voicemail from my mother. "Natalie, honey, I heard you filed something with the court. Please, this is going too far. We can talk about this. It's family." I deleted it without listening to the rest. Family? Was I family when they sold my apartment without a word? Was I family when they handed over the money I earned through years of grinding freelance gigs, while Jamie blew it all on poker tables and crypto scams? Don't lecture me about family. The next day, I walked into our first mediation session. My parents and Jamie were already seated, looking like they'd walked into a funeral. Dad was pale. Mom wouldn't even meet my eyes. Jamie? She had the audacity to wear designer sunglasses indoors and sip from an overpriced iced latte. Classy. "Natalie," my father began, "we didn't mean for things to get this far." I said nothing. Just placed a stack of bank statements on the table. The mediator looked between us. "Miss Brooks is claiming financial damages due to the sale of the condo, which she asserts she paid for exclusively despite the title being in her father's name." "I paid for everything," I said coldly. "Mortgage. Utilities. Repairs. I have receipts for all of it." My father shifted. "That may be true, but..." I cut him off. "And then you sold it behind my back, drained our joint account, and wired it to her." I pointed at Jamie. "So she could pay off shady debts and keep her fake influencer lifestyle intact." Jamie rolled her eyes. "You're being so dramatic." The mediator held up a hand. "Let's stay civil." I laughed, bitter, tired. Civility left the room when they stole my home. After the session, I got a text from my aunt, my mom's sister. Someone I barely talked to. "Your mom called me crying. Natalie, please don't destroy your family over money. Jamie needs help. You'll find another apartment." Another apartment? Like homes grow on trees? I poured my entire 20s into that place. It wasn't just walls and windows, it was proof that I could build something on my own, without relying on anyone. It was my safe space, my independence, my pride. And now I was being told to move on, because the family screw-up needed another chance. I stared at that message for a long time, then blocked her number. Weeks passed. My lawyer filed a motion to freeze the proceeds of the condo sale. The court granted it, pending the outcome of the case. Suddenly, the pleading voicemails turned into angry ones. "You had no right to touch our money. You're ruining your sister's life. You're blowing everything out of proportion." Ah. There it was. They were never sorry for what they did. They were only sorry they got caught. Then came the breaking point. I was leaving my attorney's office when I noticed someone waiting near my car. Jamie. She was wearing oversized sunglasses again, her disguise, apparently, and pacing nervously. When she saw me, she rushed forward. "Look, I just want to talk," she said. "I know you're pissed, but..." "You think?" She flinched. "I didn't ask them to sell it, okay? Mom and Dad did that. I didn't know until after." "You didn't know, but you took the money anyway." Her voice dropped. "I was desperate, Nat. These people were threatening me. I owed the wrong kind of guys." I stared at her. "And now you want me to feel bad for you?" "No," she whispered. "I want to make it right." I almost laughed. "You can start by wiring back every cent." She looked at me like I'd asked her to cut off a limb. "I don't have it anymore." Of course she didn't. That night, I cried. Not because I was sad. Because I was exhausted. I was tired of being the responsible one, the mature one, the fixer. I was tired of being punished for doing the right thing while Jamie was rewarded for chaos. My entire life, I'd been taught to put family first. But what about when family puts you last? My lawyer called the next morning with news. "The evidence is solid," he said. "There's a good chance the judge will rule in your favor. But your parents' attorney just reached out with a proposal." I braced myself. They're offering to pay you $100,000 to drop the lawsuit, no admission of guilt, no apology, just money. I closed my eyes. They thought I could be bought. The next court date arrived. As I walked into the courtroom, I saw them all on the other side, the people who raised me, who I once thought would protect me no matter what. Now, they looked like strangers. But I felt stronger than I had in months. When the judge entered, I stood tall. Because this wasn't just about a condo anymore. It was about respect. It was about finally standing up and saying, no more. When the hearing began, I expected tension. But I didn't expect chaos. The courtroom buzzed with whispers the moment I walked in. Word had spread, a young woman suing her own parents for selling her home without permission? It was tabloid gold. But I didn't care about the noise. I was there for justice. I sat beside my lawyer, watching as my parents and Jamie filed in like a trio of ghosts. My mother looked as if she hadn't slept in days. My father wouldn't even look in my direction. Jamie, though. She still wore her smug attitude like a designer coat she couldn't afford. The judge entered, and silence fell like a guillotine. This court is now in session. The first hour was standard. My lawyer presented evidence, bank transfers, email records, the property deed. All clearly showing I had paid for the condo in full, even though it was titled under my father's name for tax reasons, as they once claimed. I stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. I remembered the conversations back then, how they'd said, trust us. We're family. What a joke. When it was time for the defense, my father stood. His voice shook. Natalie is right that she contributed significantly. But we never intended to hurt her. We thought we were helping Jamie during a crisis. That's when the judge asked, Mr. Brooks, were you aware that your daughter Jamie has a documented history of financial fraud? The room froze. What? I whispered, blinking at the judge. Even my lawyer looked blindsided. The judge continued. In reviewing the case, we uncovered 2 prior civil complaints filed against Ms. Jamie Brooks. One for defrauding a small business, another for running an unlicensed investment scheme. All color drained from my mother's face. My dad sat down like his knees gave out. Jamie? Her jaw clenched. But she said nothing. The courtroom murmured as the judge banged his gavel. Silence, please. Outside the courtroom during a break, I stared at Jamie. You ran an investment scam? She lit a cigarette with shaking hands. It wasn't a scam. It was a business. You took money from people and promised returns you couldn't guarantee. It was temporary. I was going to pay them back. With what? My condo? My savings? Her silence was my answer. For a second, she looked like a little girl caught sneaking cookies. Then, her mask slid back on. You always thought you were better than me. No, I said, voice low. I thought we were sisters. Back in court, my lawyer brought out the final blow, a signed email chain. Jamie had contacted the real estate agent directly, pretending to act on my behalf. She used my name. My email format. Even signed as me. The courtroom gasped. That's identity fraud, the judge said. My mother stood abruptly. We didn't know she did that. We thought. You signed the transfer papers, I snapped. Without asking a single question. We thought you'd left it to us. My father shouted. You've always been distant, always too proud to let us in. Because every time I let you in, you take something from me. The judge banged the gavel again. Order in the court. But it was too late. The curtain had dropped. And the truth was out. After court, my phone exploded. Texts from extended family, old neighbors, even co-workers who had somehow heard the news. Are you really suing your parents? That's messed up. Your sister's a mess, but this is too much. They didn't know half of it. And they didn't care to ask. Public opinion was already against me. Because in every story, the one who speaks up first becomes the villain, even when they're the victim. A week later, I got a message from Jamie. Just 4 words, you ruined my life. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. I didn't ruin your life. I just stopped letting you ruin mine. I hit send. Blocked her. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. The final hearing came faster than I expected. This time, the courtroom felt heavier, like even the walls were holding their breath. My lawyer delivered a closing statement so sharp, even the judge looked impressed. But my parents' attorney made one last desperate plea, Your Honor, this is a family matter. My clients ask for leniency in the name of reconciliation. The judge looked at me. Miss Brooks, Do you wish to say anything before I issue a ruling? I stood slowly. Yes, I said. I used to believe blood was thicker than water. That no matter how many times my family crossed the line, I was supposed to forgive. Stay silent. Keep the peace. I paused, my voice steady. But silence only protects the guilty. And forgiveness without accountability isn't healing, it's permission. The courtroom was dead silent. Even Jamie was staring at the floor. The judge nodded. Thank you, Miss Brooks. His ruling came down hard. Jamie was ordered to repay every dollar of the condo's proceeds, plus damages for fraud and emotional distress. My parents were found civilly liable for facilitating the illegal sale. The condo title was to be restored under my name once funds were returned, or equivalent restitution would be made. And Jamie? A criminal investigation was recommended for identity theft. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just stood there, breathing. Finally, like I wasn't drowning anymore. As we left the courthouse, my mother grabbed my arm. Tears streamed down her face. Natalie, please. We can fix this. We're still your parents. I looked at her hand. Then at her. You stopped being my parents the moment you sold my life out from under me. I walked away. I didn't look back. Winning in court should have felt like the end of a nightmare. Instead, it was just the beginning of another one. The news spread like wildfire. Woman sues parents over condo fraud, sister under criminal investigation. Every local outlet ran it. Then it hit a viral Twitter thread. Then Reddit. Then YouTube channels I'd never heard of were debating whether I was a heartless daughter or brave survivor. No one seemed to care about the facts. Only the drama. My inbox overflowed. You're disgusting. Family comes first. Good for you. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. I hope you rot. Can you come on my podcast and talk about it? I'd go to the grocery store and feel eyes on me. Once, a stranger came up and said, "Hey, you're that girl, right? The one who took her parents to court?" I didn't answer. He smirked. "Bet you're fun at Thanksgiving." I left my card in the middle of the aisle and walked out. The worst part? People assumed I was rich now. As if getting justice meant I walked away with a fat check and a champagne toast. No one saw what it really looked like. Renting a tiny one-bedroom apartment with second-hand furniture. Calling lawyers every other day for updates on whether Jamie had paid anything back, she hadn't. Waking up at 2 a.m. in cold sweats, wondering if I'd made a mistake exposing everything. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't focus on work. Couldn't feel safe. The people who were supposed to love me had violated me so deeply, I didn't know if I'd ever trust anyone again. 3 weeks after the ruling, my aunt called. I hadn't spoken to her in years. I just wanted to say, "I'm proud of you." I blinked. "Seriously?" She sighed. "Your mom's been spinning the story, saying you betrayed the family." But I knew something was off when she suddenly had a new car and Jamie showed up wearing a Rolex. I laughed bitterly. That's what finally made people question them? The Rolex? "Sometimes," she said gently, "people need proof in their face to believe what's been true all along." One night, I came home to find an envelope shoved under my apartment door. No return address. Just my name in scratchy handwriting. Inside was a photo. Me and Jamie, maybe age 6 and 8, playing dress up. She had her arm around me, grinning with baby teeth. I looked up at her like she hung the moon. Underneath the photo, written in red marker. "Still your sister. Always." I stared at it for a long time. Then I burned it in the kitchen sink. Meanwhile, Jamie's investigation heated up. Apparently, I wasn't her only victim. A retired couple from Florida came forward, claiming she'd taken their life savings under false promises of a high-return crypto project. A young nurse from Chicago said she'd been pressured into giving Jamie access to her Venmo and savings accounts. Each news story made my stomach turn. How long had this been going on? How many people had she hurt? How many times had our parents covered for her? It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a pattern. A few weeks later, I got a letter. Court-ordered restitution, $214,000. Jamie had 60 days to comply or face jail time. She responded by vanishing. Her phone went dead. Social media wiped. No one had seen her. My parents claimed they didn't know where she went, but I didn't believe that for a second. Still, it didn't matter. The law was on my side now. And so was time. My therapist, yes, I finally got one, said something that stuck with me. Justice doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes, it just stops the bleeding long enough for you to start healing. I repeated that to myself every morning like a mantra. Because healing? It wasn't instant. There were days I couldn't get out of bed. Nights I sat on the floor, hugging a pillow and wondering if I'd ever feel like myself again. But I kept going. Then something unexpected happened. I got an email from a woman named Clarissa. She ran a nonprofit that helped people recover from family-based financial abuse. She'd read about my case. "We're launching a survivor-led panel," she wrote. "Would you be open to sharing your story?" My first instinct was no. I didn't want more attention. More judgment. But then I thought about how alone I'd felt. How long I stayed silent because I thought I was the problem. So I said yes. The panel was held at a small community center. About 50 people came. Not reporters. Not online trolls. Just survivors. One by one, they told their stories, brothers forging signatures, mothers emptying retirement accounts, cousins stealing inheritances. It was heartbreaking. But it was also empowering. Because for the first time, I wasn't just a headline. I was seen. I was believed. And I wasn't alone. After the panel, a young woman approached me. She looked barely 20. "Your story," she said, eyes brimming with tears. "It's my life. My mom just sold my car without telling me. Said I owed her for raising me." I gave her a hug. "You're not crazy," I whispered. "And you're not wrong for wanting your life back." That night, I wrote in my journal. I used to think justice would feel like revenge. But now I know, it feels like freedom. 1 month later, I stood outside the condo building. My building. The restitution hadn't arrived yet, but the court had frozen the sale, and Jamie's name had been removed from every record. It would take time. But eventually, the condo would be mine again. I walked up to the door, ran my hand along the railing. And I smiled. Not because everything was perfect. But because I finally felt like I was standing on solid ground. 6 months later, I held the keys to my condo. Not a duplicate. Not a loaner. Mine. Again. The bank had retracted the fraudulent sale. Jamie's accounts had been seized. My restitution arrived in 3 separate payments, each one bringing with it a wave of nausea, like cashing in pieces of my past. But the day I stepped back into that unit, it felt different. Not haunted. Not tainted. Empowered. I didn't cry. I just stood in the middle of the living room, took a deep breath, and whispered. "You don't win, Jamie. Not this time." By then, she was already in custody. They caught her trying to cross into Canada under a fake name. Turns out, she'd conned another man along the way, some tech investor who thought she was launching a wellness app that didn't exist. He lost $80,000. Pressed charges. That sealed her fate. Her trial lasted 2 weeks. I attended every day. Not to gloat. To witness. She barely looked at me. Sat there in designer sunglasses like the courtroom was just another brunch spot she didn't want to be at. When they read her sentence, 5 years without parole, she finally turned her head. And smiled. That smile chilled me. Like she was saying, "This isn't over." Afterward, people asked if I felt satisfied. I didn't know how to answer. Because justice isn't neat. It doesn't undo trauma. It doesn't rewind time. It doesn't make you forget the nights you cried so hard your chest ached, or the way your mother's voice cracked when she said, "We did what we had to." But still. It mattered. It gave me back something I hadn't realized I'd lost. My voice. My parents? They disappeared from my life like ghosts. No apologies. No letters. Not even a phone call. Just silence. I later heard through a distant cousin that they'd moved to a smaller place outside Dallas. My father had retired early. My mother ran a life coaching Instagram page now, full of hollow quotes about forgiveness and family. The irony made me nauseous. I didn't block her page. I watched it grow. And every time I saw her post some generic quote like, "Blood is thicker than water," I reminded myself, some people only know how to love when they're in control. Life didn't magically become perfect. I still flinched at the sound of unexpected knocks. Still got anxiety when checking my bank account. Still had nightmares where I walked into my condo and found it empty again, scrubbed of all signs I ever existed there. But I also learned how to breathe again. I filled the condo with soft colors, warm lights, plants that didn't need much attention. I invited people over. Friends. Chosen family. People who didn't want anything from me except truth and laughter. It was the first time in years I felt safe in my own space. One night, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. I recognized the writing instantly. Jamie. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Natalie. You probably won't read this. But if you do. I'm sorry I got caught. Not sorry for what I did. Just for the fact that it ended this way. You were always the golden one. The one who made Mom proud. I was just trying to level the playing field. Hope the condo's nice. Jay. I laughed. Out loud. That was the apology? A confession of envy dressed as poison? I didn't burn this letter. I framed it. Hung it in the guest bathroom. So I'd never forget that some people confuse love with leverage. That fall, Clarissa from the nonprofit invited me to speak again. But this time, not on a panel. A keynote. She said, "You've become a symbol, Natalie. Not just of survival, but of reclaiming what's yours." I wrote my speech over weeks. Deleted it. Rewrote it. When the day came, I stood in front of 300 people, survivors, advocates, lawyers, therapists. And I said, they took my home. But they didn't take my power. They stole my trust. But I built it back, brick by brick, moment by moment. I stand here today not because I won. But because I refuse to disappear. To anyone out there who's been betrayed by the people meant to protect them. You are not broken. You are not crazy. And you are never alone. The crowd stood. Some cried. I did too. But this time, they were tears of release. I walked off stage and saw a young man waiting by the wings. He looked barely 25. Nervous. Clutching a notebook. "You don't know me," he said. "But I followed your story. You gave me the courage to report my uncle for stealing my tuition money." I smiled. And I realized. Maybe this wasn't just about revenge. Maybe this was about turning pain into purpose. 1 year after the verdict, I hosted a dinner party in my condo. Nothing fancy. Homemade pasta. Candles. Jazz playing softly. Halfway through the night, I looked around at the people at my table. A teacher. A nurse. A stand-up comic. A florist. No one related by blood. But all of them family. One friend raised a glass. "To Natalie," she said. "For choosing herself." We all clinked. And in that moment, I knew. I didn't just get my home back. I got myself back.